Uh, did anything happen? Did anything happen over the weekend? Did anything happen over the weekend? There was a little dinner where all these establishment, elitist, out of touch, the bastions of the journalism establishment, they got together to have a little dinner for themselves. It's called the White House Correspondents Dinner. And to tell you the truth, when I was at the Young Turks, the Young Turks had a little party on White House Correspondents Dinner weekend. We didn't actually go into the dinner, but we had a little party where we'd invite, when I was there, we'd invite, people from Huffington Post and, all these corporate outlets. And I didn't particularly like being there because it's not my favorite thing to brush elbows with the corporate media that I think are part of the problem. So fortunately, I wasn't there this week. But I just watched the full comedian act that has been getting everybody up in arms, and I have a lot to say. But what I want to start with for the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and by the way, press the share button. Unfortunately, YouTube is not telling everybody who's subscribed and everybody that clicks the notification bell, they're not notifying all subscribers when I'm live. Same problem happening to Jimmy Dore, Lee Camp, Kyle Kalinske, Jamarl Thomas, to name a few. So press the share button. Let's get it out there. But I want to start with something that really, really turns my skin. So let me play the part that really bothers me. Doesn't bother me, but the reaction to it bothers me. Here we go.
Flint still doesn't have clean water.
Oh boy, did you hear that? Did you hear that, folks? Let me play it for you one more time.
But he has helped you. He's have clean water.
Hold on.
I gotta get out of here. Good night. Flint still doesn't have clean water.
I don't know what the best part of that is. I don't know what the best part of that is. If it's the fact that she said it, which I really appreciate. I happen to think she was really funny, but the establishment media didn't like her. I'll get to her and her act in a little bit. But did you see the faces of the people, the journalists in the crowd when she said Flint doesn't have clean water? It was a mix of can you pass the salt, or just faces of, what do you mean Flint doesn't have clean water? The EPA and Michigan tell me they have clean water. What do you mean, Michelle, they don't have clean water? I mean, it was, I got to play it one more time. I'm sorry. Got to play it one more time. Why did I do that? I just X'd her out by accident. Hold on. I'll get her. We do these things live here on YouTube.com/Jordan Sheridan Reports. Hold on. I'm getting Michelle Wolf. Complete remarks. Here we go. So she says at the end this. Look at those reactions. Totally disinterested in an American citizen, an American city that after 4 years, still doesn't have clean water. A bunch of wealthy, out of touch, cocktail crowd, frankly, jerk-offs. A comedian is actually informing the journalists of the state of the water in Flint. And the journalists are like, pass the salt? Alina Fix said, out of touch Marie Antoinette's. I agree. So Craig says they should be ashamed. Maybe they were, and that's why they weren't clapping. Yeah, Alex says, let them drink lead. I agree. So not only do I have by the way, I think it's great that Michelle Wolf brought that up. And by the way, Michelle Wolf, a comedian, and I plan on watching her Netflix special, she covered Flint more than both CNN and MSNBC covered. Do you know on April 25th, so 5 days ago, it was the 4-year anniversary of the disastrous water switch? Neither of those channels covered it. After the governor of Michigan literally just shut down the water pods. 4 years later, they still don't have clean water. As I've been reporting, the science being used is frankly fraudulent. So what really got to me the most about this, I love that she said it. I think it was terrible, the reaction from the crowd. They clearly didn't care. But we then saw all of these, the resistance leaders, these establishment Democrats all of a sudden jumping on the Flint bandwagon. And by the way, as a journalist who has continued to cover Flint, when it's not in the news and when it's not sexy, I invite anybody, any pundit, any journalist who wants to start paying attention to it. So it's not a knock on people who kind of ignored it and have, forgotten it. I think it's disgraceful that they have ignored it, but it's not like I'm going to say, no, don't cover it now. Don't care now. I invite all people. But the problem is the people that suddenly started sending out tweets and, the poor people of Flint and shame on the media for forgetting about Flint are literally the same exact people who have been fomenting at the mouth every day of their lives about Donald Trump and Russia and Stormy Daniels and nonsense. Let's see, all of a sudden, these concerned establishment Democrats about Flint. And kudos to my business partner, Jen, who sent me a lot of these. She's a fantastic researcher. So, you want to see the Johnny-come-latelys now on the Flint bandwagon? Okay. Well, we got Brian Fallon, who is Hillary Clinton's press spokesperson. He said the cruelest thing said by Michelle Wolf was the reminder that Flint still does not have clean water. I couldn't agree with you more, Mr. Fallon. As I tweeted at you, if only there was a Democratic nominee in 2016 that instead of using Flint as a photo op and one campaign stop, if only there was a candidate who made it a campaign issue, who fought for the citizens of Flint, who put in her policy more and more relief money to Flint, who put more and more relief money, not just for the pipes, but for the endemic poverty in Flint, who actually put as one of her campaign issues, we're going to look into the EPA's lead and copper rule, which is the bogus, fraudulent rule that water utilities are using all over the United States to claim water is quote-unquote safe when it's not. As I've been telling you for weeks, I'm working on a big investigative piece on that. So, oh man, Brian, do you know a candidate who got the Democratic nominee that went to Flint once and then never mentioned it again? Do any of you know who that is? Any of you know who it is? In the chat, who this Brian Fallon, who, by the way, now that he's not Hillary Clinton's campaign spokesperson, most of the tweets I see from Mr. Fallon are about Trump and Russia. All of a sudden, though, Brian Fallon, oh, it's so cruel that Flint doesn't have clean water and nobody cares. And by the way, to be clear, I'm not criticizing people for coming to the party late. I'm criticizing these people because they're the ones that are making sure the only thing that get attention, the only thing that gets coverage is Trump and Russia, because they're political operatives. They don't care about the people in Flint. If they did care about the people in Flint, Brian Fallon would have pushed his candidate. I mean, obviously it's not his fault, but Hillary Clinton would have actually made it more than just a one-stop campaign issue. Because as I tweeted today, you want to know something? If Hillary Clinton would have fought for the residents of Flint, if she would have been against the Dakota Access Pipeline, if she would have been against all these fossil fuel projects, she would have fought for the downtrodden, she'd be president today. We might not like it, but she would have won the presidency. I do believe Her not coming around against the Dakota Access Pipeline made a big difference. I think it was one of the reasons Bernie Sanders voters refused to, by and large, to come out against her. But you got, Brian Fallon, her campaign spokesperson, all of a sudden he cares. So I want to make sure you're clear. I'm not upset that more people are suddenly saying these nice things. I'm upset because it's hollow. They're not going to follow through. You think Brian Fallon's going to be tweeting about Flint in 2 days? Doubt it. Let's keep going. Who else? Here we have Leah McElrath. Leah McElrath. Finally, we could focus more outrage about this truth with which Michelle Wolf closed her set. Flint still doesn't have clean water. Thanks. Thanks. Well, guess who Leah? I don't know if she still works there or she used to work for there. She worked for Share Blue. Share Blue, which is a major David Brock, Neera Tanden, Democratic establishment platform. So if Leah, who worked for Share Blue, if she cares so much about Flint, if the Democratic establishment cares so much about Flint, why are they just tweeting about it now? Why are they just tweeting about it now? I'm not saying this because I'm super duper awesome and I've been covering Flint forever. I'm just doing what real journalists should do. It's not a victory party for me. I am calling out the hypocrites who, when it's trendy, the comedian, the controversial comedian, she did a thing where a shout out at the end, Flint's not clean, so let me throw it out there. Yeah, and I've seen some progressives who haven't been covering Flint much either. They are progressive media people I'm talking about, who retweeted these tweets or sent them out themselves. Well, I don't see them covering Flint at all. And there's a lot to cover. If you look on this channel right now, you could click on playlists. There's playlists for different videos. I itemize them into different playlists. I have a whole Flint water playlist, and this channel's only been operating for 2 months. I probably already have over 15 videos just on Flint. But all of a sudden, these people suddenly care about Flint. So, you know what? For people with actual integrity who might come forward and say, you know what, I screwed up, I've let this go, and now I'm going to call more attention to it. Bravo. We're not all perfect. I invite you. But for these establishment Democrat hacks, and I'm going to get to more of them, suddenly we care about Flint. Well, the residents don't need your faux concern. The residents need action. They need people busing into Flint to protest with them. What do you think would have happened? There's 50 residents in Flint who went to protest a few weeks ago when the criminal governor, Rick Snyder, closed down all the water pods saying the water is safe. Can you imagine if some of these same people would have showed up and it could have been 500 or 1,000 or thousands of people protesting? Maybe then it becomes a much bigger news story. And maybe then people start asking publicly, wait a minute, how is this governor closing down all the water pods for poisoned poor people when not all of the pipes have been replaced in Flint? How are we allowing that to happen? And if you'd like to see real reporting, if you'd like to see real reporters get back in the field to cover Flint, there's the address where you can make it happen. For those of you that have subscribed, thank you so much. For those of you who haven't, I hope you'll consider it. You could do $1 a month, $3 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month. Jen will put the link in the chat. So let me show you a couple more here. Here's this one, I couldn't believe this one. So this guy, Wesley Lowery, he's a national reporter for the Washington Post, and he says, the most upsetting thing Michelle Wolf said last night was the reminder that Flint, Michigan still doesn't have clean water. Imagine if the DC press corps and political chattering class had spent today performatively upset about that. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Imagine Wes, and I'm not calling Wes out, I don't know him, but imagine, Wes, if there was this major world-recognized newspaper, I think it's called the Washington Post. Imagine if you worked for them and you wrote about the Flint water crisis, and you wrote about the governor closing down the water pods, and you wrote about the EPA and state environmental agencies cooking up science to declare the water safe. Oh, if only me, Wes Clark, worked for a major, world-renowned, huge resources owned by Amazon newspaper that could cover the poor people of Flint that were poisoned. Imagine that, Wes. Imagine that. And again, I don't know Wes Lowery. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm not attacking him as a person, but this tweet was so tone deaf, so clueless. You work for the Washington Post. You work for the Washington Post. Write about it. Tell your editor there's major, major corruption going on there. Tell the editor. Tell the executive editor. You know what? The world could take one or two less stories about Robert Mueller or Russia or Trump. Because the Washington Post, they say, I think their slogan is democracy dies in the dark. Democracy dies in the dark. Well, people are getting sick and dying in the open, in the light, in Flint, Michigan. People are getting sick and dying in the light in Flint, Michigan. I got one more for you. One more. And this one, oh boy. His name's Jon Favreau. He is one of the hosts of this popular podcast. What's it called? Crooked Media. Oh, Pod Save America. I listened to it once and I couldn't listen anymore. It's just Obama-loving Democratic establishment bullshit. But it's very popular, so credit to them. He wrote, comedian ends comedy dinner by saying that Flint doesn't have clean water, an attempt to point out Washington's continued neglect of people who need help. Washington responds with a righteous debate about the tone and civility of the comedian's jokes. Perfect. So just think about this. And Jen would know better than me. I think Pod Save America, his podcast that he co-hosts, is like in the top 5 of podcasts in the country. It's one of the most popular podcasts in this country. I would put the very little money that I have, I would put the very little money that I have down that Mr. Favreau and his co-hosts at Pod Save America have not spoken or covered the Flint water crisis ever on their podcast. Maybe they're going to this week in relation to the comedian mentioning it. So again, I'm not attacking Jon Favreau, who was a speechwriter for President Obama. I don't know him. I don't care about him as a person. But the tone deafness and the jumping on the bandwagon of the trendiness of, oh, poor Flint, the comedian mentioned it, so let's tweet about it and let's pretend we care for 2 minutes before we go back to talking about Trump and Russia and, you know, whatever other nonsense. If you're going to actually stay on the story, I will come back. I will do video after video crediting you. I don't care if you're an establishment Democrat, a progressive, a conservative, it doesn't matter. As long as you cover it, and you cover it the right way, not just repeating what the government tells you. But enough of these people feigning interest and concern for the people of Flint. Well, you weren't feigning interest for the people of Flint when I was there last year when 6 residents got arrested and thrown in jail for the crime of expressing frustration at still 3 years into it, not having clean water. Where was your indignation then? I didn't see any stories. I didn't hear Pod Save America talking about it. I didn't hear Wesley Lowery of the Washington Post talking about it. Being a journalist means you cover things when all the cameras have left. Being a journalist means you cover things when it's not trendy, or it's not trending on Twitter, or it's not sexy. That's what real journalism is. When you cover things because lives are on the line, whether it makes you money or not. So I reject these Johnny-come-latelys, I don't know what the female version of that would be, who pretend to care. You know what? Let's look at their Twitter in a few days, see if they're still tweeting about Flint, like I do every day. And once again, I want to be clear. Don't take this the wrong way. This is not about me. This is not a kudos to me at all. I'm dying because I haven't been back to Flint since, I think, September or October. I just don't have the money. That's where you come in. Patreon.com/JordanCharityReports. I really bleed this stuff. Jen could tell you in the chat, I've been working on a major story. I must have rewritten it at least 40 to 50 times at this point. Still trying to get more people on the record to get this thing published because I believe it exposes cooked up science being used to declare the water safe, not just in Flint, but around the country. So, you know, Brian Stelter, his little media criticism show, he's never going to criticize these establishment buddies because these are the people that they're going to have drinks with after the White House Correspondents Dinner. You think they're talking about Flint at the after parties? You think they're talking right now on MSNBC? You know what the headline is? John Kelly, the chief of staff, called Trump a moron. Oh my God. What'd you say? Endo says Jordan needs a white tape in the bridge of his glasses. What you trying to say, Endo? What's wrong with my glasses? Stop drinking the haterade, yo. So that's what I have to say about Flint. Don't come tell me you care about Flint when it's in vogue to care about Flint. You either care about American citizens being poisoned and a cover-up after that and then being left abandoned to die. You either care about that all the time or you don't. It's really that simple.